Welcome to Faith, Fashion, and Fur with Leslie Souza. I am continuing my breast cancer story today. The reason that I have this scar that I don't cover up, I mean, I do if I don't wear a sundress, but people recognize this sometimes in the elevator. I've had people say, "Oh, cancer." That is where my port was, and it is very significant to me. I'll go on to tell you a little bit more about some tattoos that I got and why I chose that and the reason behind those, the importance of that for me. But at the time, I don't know if at some point in my life I'll change my mind, but at the time, I did want to be reminded of this. I wanted to remind myself of God's faithfulness. This doesn't signify, it is a scar. But to me, it's like, I don't know if you've heard of kintsugi. I teach a class on it, and it is Japanese. It's where they take pottery and they break it. If you break it to pieces, I can't put it back together for you, but if you've just got a couple broken pieces, I can put gold in it, and it ends up being so much more beautiful than it originally was. And I think that's what God does with our stories. When we allow Him to walk beside us through our trials and just the pain that you go through in this life that you can't get through life without going through. If we allow God into that, He walks alongside us, and we have these beautiful glimpses of grace. So this just reminds me of those glimpses. To everybody else, it's an ugly scar. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention yesterday, so I have a tendency of doing this. I kind of go through my story and then I'm like, oh, I gotta go back a little bit. One thing I forgot to mention is that before I was diagnosed, I was asked to be in women's ministry at my church. And it was just proof to me that God, He goes before us. He puts people in our paths. He, of course, He's sovereign, and He knows exactly what we're going to go through in our lives and before we go through it. So He put this beautiful support system in my path. I had some very, very good Christian friends, and slowly some just went on their way with something else going on in their lives, and or one moved. And it's not that I don't still treasure or love those people. That I guess it'd be kind of like those friendships they say that you have for a season. And when that started happening, I was like frantically trying to hold on to my friends. I was like, let's get together, let's do this, and then just the same kind of things kept happening, like not being able to get together, whatever. And as I let go, God just moved in, and He gave me this group of, I think at the time there were probably 15 women or more, and they were just prayer warriors. They were you could count on them. Maybe they weren't all your best friends right away, but the foundation was the same. And that's one thing very, very important in your friendships. If you are a Christian, you want your friends to be Christians, because that's, building your friendship from the bottom up. So I was asked to be in this group. I gladly accepted. We were at a meeting just the beginning of 2020, before the breast cancer diagnosis, and there was a lady there. I was just really drawn to her. She had a very calming nature about her. She chose her words like beautifully. Everything was like beautifully put. And she was telling us, I didn't know what the trial was, but she was telling us she was going through the worst trial of her whole life. And I just felt really drawn to her and like a connection with her. And she's a little bit further into my she pops back up in my cancer journey, so I wanted to mention her now. And when I did go to church and I got anointed with oil, I told you about that yesterday, she was there, and I was surprised because I barely knew her and I'd only seen her in that meeting, but she was right there to just love on me and give me a hug and to pray with me. So it, that is priceless. As you know, if your heart has ever been breaking and there's somebody that comes alongside you and puts their arm around you and prays with you, you know, thank you, Jesus, for those. Me and my friend that I used to work with, we call them Jesus kisses. So, okay, so yesterday, I talked about getting diagnosed with breast cancer and being called at work. And so as soon as I found out I had the breast cancer, I talked to the breast health nurse and the radiologist. They were on two different lines. They called me together. They asked if it was okay for them to tell me the news over the phone, and I said yes. Immediately, I went out to my staff. At that time, I was managing a court staff, and I went out and I gathered my people together and I told them what had happened. And I worked with a lot of Christians, and that was a fabulous job and a fabulous group of people. So when I told them about my cancer diagnosis, you know, of course they were shocked, and as I was, and all those emotions that go along with it, and concerned, definitely concerned. But I said something that surprised me at the time, but it was so true. And it goes back to that devotion I read the morning of my diagnosis that I read to you yesterday. And I said, God has been preparing me for this for a long time. And as soon as I said it, I was like, in my mind, you know, where did that come from? But it was so true. He had been. So my girlfriend and I, the ones that talks about the Jesus kisses with me, we would do that like after the weekend. We'd get together and we'd tell each other if there were any Jesus kisses. So, you know, during the weekend, and I don't know, just encourage both of us. So I didn't know how long I was going to be away from work. And we went downstairs. We had a restaurant we always like to go to, and we had gone there so many times. I had this special like teriyaki chicken bowl that I ordered a specific way with more vegetables. So they started calling, we did, and then they did, started calling it the Leslie Bowl. So we decided to go down together, and you know, my head was swimming by this time, and we went down together to go have that lunch and just be able to talk, and also just to figure out like, hey, I'm going to be out of work for a while. And this woman, friend, coworker, awesome human being, compassionate. Anyway, she was going to be taking over for me, and there was no one better. And I had my complete confidence in her, but I also really trusted her, and we're still very good friends to this day. So anyway, we went down. It was packed. The restaurant's full, and we went outside to sit because there was like 2 tables out there or something, and we went outside to eat our lunch because we were going to go across the street, but we were like, no, we really want to have the Leslie's Bowl. The restaurant's packed, but there's one seat out here. Let's just sit out here on the sidewalk. You know, not ideal, but worth the Leslie Bowl, I guess. We determined. So let me see. Here's my Jesus kiss part. Okay, so what happened when we were out there? It's amazing. We're out there. We're talking. You know, we're sharing all these different work things, concerns, blah, blah, blah. And from across the street of the other restaurant that we had considered going to, we saw this man. And in my humanness, I put a label on him. You know, he looked homeless. I don't know that he was homeless. I'm not saying that in a derogatory way at all. He just looked very hard and worn, like he'd had a hard life. His clothes were very dirty. And he just starts coming across the street, right, like at us, like he's a beeline, like diagonal. And my friend and I, we like held onto our purses because, and he walked over and he stopped at the table right where I was, and he leaned in and he looked at me with beautiful, tender and soft eyes. And he said, Jesus is with you. and the hair just stood up on the back of my neck. I immediately felt guilty for clutching my purse. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't even speak, and my friend couldn't speak either. And then he just went down the sidewalk and got kind of lost in between the other people. And her and I just looked at each other, and she goes, Leslie, that was for you. And I was like, I know. And then I was like, I wonder if that was an angel. Like, you hear about those, the angels on earth, angels in disguise or whatever. So anyway, that was a moment that gave me peace. A moment, of course, that right now I'm telling you, I remember to this day. It's also a moment that I think of now in my life when I'm going through a hard time or season. Jesus is with you. And it's true for you too. As a Christian, Jesus promises never to leave us, never to forsake us. He is there with you as much as he is with me. So, bask in that for the afternoon. So, let's see what else I have. Okay, I have a few minutes left. So, I'm going to read a little something. This is by Grant Colfax Toller. Very short. Oft times he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. We see the ugly part of the tapestry. We see the yarn or whatever, and it's made out of, and where it's cut with the scissors and tied in knots. But God sees what we are going to look like once it gets flipped over. After all the trials, all the pain, He sees the kintsugi that comes out of it. He sees the beautiful what's the word I'm trying to think of? I do this too. I can't find the right word, but just the result, this beautiful result. So I love that. Oft times he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. So the next thing that happened was I couldn't go on the trip. And I felt this really strong nudging from the Holy Spirit to give my trip away. And I talked to the pastor's wife, and she said, what about? And I wasn't surprised. It was the name of the lady that I'd met at the Bible study that had hugged me when I went forward at church to be anointed with oil and receive prayer. So that took some convincing. She was very hesitant about the trip, but she eventually agreed to go. And that gave me great joy, because if it couldn't be me going, it was her. And she was in the middle of her hardest trial, and I had something I could give her, and I had her over to my house. We had tea together. I gave her all the things I had bought for the trip for her to enjoy. And I really had, it's so true. I know I didn't finish that sentence, but it's so true that when you give, you get more joy than when you get. So that was an amazing part of my my story too. So let's see. Okay, I'm gonna move on here a little bit because I love music, so I just have more songs and song lyrics on here. So so God, he takes care of everything. I'll finish today with a verse, 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll be back again tomorrow for the rest of my breast cancer story. Thank you. Bye.